Thank you. I am your typical college student. I was a college dropout. I went to school back in 1972, and my personal goal was that I wanted to earn a degree in graphic arts management. I set out from 9th grade, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in the printing industry. And I knew that the school that was going to offer that degree was very few institutions in America that had this degree, and I was accepted and I went off to school. Here's my dream. I'm living the dream. And as happens, life gets in the way. 7 months later, I found myself leaving school and heading back to Minneapolis saying, what am I going to do now with my life? So due to my personal experience, and youth sometimes gets in the way of what we want to do with our lives. And we kind of find out that, you know what, we have this dream, I have this goal, what I want to be, and then it just doesn't happen. We have to go back and kind of ask ourselves, now, how do I pick up the pieces and go on from where I wanted to be to where I am today? So my research and my interests have been, why is it that the students that have all these hopes and dreams, parents have hopes and dreams for their kids, they see their kids go off to school, and do you realize that about 1 million students will go to college this fall for the first time? And next year, over 200,000 of them won't come back. I thankfully was not the typical freshman college dropout. I went to a high school that had industrial education. I spent 3 years taking graphic arts classes. As a result of taking these graphic arts classes, I was able to obtain a job. When I went to college, I had to pay for it. And so thankfully, there was a position that was open for me as a press operator. I ran this newspaper press and made good money. It helped pay for my tuition and my room and board. And I'm coming back from some of my classes, and I'm thinking, you know what? I know more than my teachers. Why am I here? They're not telling me anything. And of course, at 18, we think we know it all anyways, right? Well, I left, I went into Minneapolis, got a job, and started working as a press operator. So, you know, we all make goals for ourselves. And my goal when I was 18 was to have a college degree. And then I changed it. At 19, it was to get a job. I also found myself married, with children, and a homeowner. In about 12 months, this was not what I wanted to envision for my life a year earlier. So here, but I looked at myself and I thought, I'm pretty successful. How many 19-year-olds own a home? Not too many, so I'm not doing too bad. I had new cars. I even had a golf club membership, something that I haven't had in about 20 years. So I was taking good vacations, and I thought life was what I wanted it to be. Then in 1980, in the workplace, a major graphic arts supplier came and said, Gordy, we'd like to offer you a job. I wasn't planning on making any changes. And the job was that you're going to travel 50% of your time, and you're going to travel around the world, and we think that you have the ability to solve printing problems where they exist. The trouble was, I had to take a pay cut. And yet, I was 25 years old, and I looked at this job offer thinking, you know what, if I finished college, this is the job I would want. This is what I would dream for. This is what I've been striving for my whole life. So why not take it? This is what I want to be. So I took the job. And I did my job well. In fact, 7 years after taking this job, I had made several significant technical contributions into the graphic arts industry. I had won an award as being the top technical employee in my division at this company, and I applied for promotion, and it was denied. Why? Something that youthful 18-year-old did. You know, about 15 years earlier, I left school, and the requirement for the promotion was a college degree. Do you think I complained? Oh yeah, anybody who would listen. I told them how unfair this was, that I had proven myself and I should not have to have a college education in order to get this degree. Well, it took me 3 years, and I finally came to the conclusion that it's better to go get the degree rather than fight it. So, motivation is kind of a curious thing. What we have to look at is that we have our actual selves of who we are today. This is what I bring to the table, but I know that there's something else that I want to be. And as we look at motivation, we have to think that, if my current situation is not where I want it to be, there's going to be tension in your life. And this tension in your life is going to drive you to do something to take away that tension and ideally, get to your ideal self of who you want to be. We look at people and we think oftentimes that, how is it that people somehow seem to be so unmotivated? They're not unmotivated, they're happy. People whose actual self is equal to their ideal self has no tension in their life. They are what they want to be. And we can't figure out at times why we can't push them forward. Why are they not motivated? They like it where they are. It's those of us who aren't where we want to be that are so anxious, that we're stressed out. What are we going to do in order to get to this particular position? So how do we succeed? If you want to be something different, you have to have a goal. And the goal better be something that's worth striving for. Something that's going to get you up out of the bed every morning, that's going to keep you up late at night, that you're willing to put in the extra effort. This goal has to be something that you're going to lose sleep over, thinking about, how am I going to get there? And then you have to persist, because you can be darn sure that the things that you're doing are going to get difficult. And how many times do we face difficulty and we say, I'm going to quit? It's not worth it. It's asking too much. That what I really need to do is maybe to pull back and to withdraw. But the old saying that when the going gets tough, the tough keep going. The final thing that we have to do is we have to have a plan. There has to be little ways that we can check off what it is that I've accomplished. I finished this, check it off, have a party. Good, I finished this class, have a party. I wrote this paper, have a party. I went to class, the teacher has a party. So, in 1990, I was 36 years old, and I finally decided to return to school. I came to the realization that I'd be 40 years old whether I went to school or not. So, why not go? Now, going to college was not easy. As you heard, I was flying 1.2 million miles in this job. I spent 120 nights a year in hotels. My travel budget was about $40,000 a year, and this was 1990. There was no internet. There was no online classes. So I actually had to physically take college classes in a classroom when I couldn't be there Monday through Friday. Thankfully, something happened around 1990, which is called a weekend college. I heard about it. I figured out I could do this. I could travel through the week, get back on Friday, take classes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and this was going to be good for me. I made a plan, and I enrolled in school. It took me 6 years, and I finally finished. When I finished that degree, guess what happened? I got promoted. Isn't that great? That's what we strive for. Now, here's the problem. I got promoted to this position, and I didn't want it. Now I wanted something else. I set a new goal. I said, you know what, this job is great, but what I really want to do is be a marketing manager. And I found out it required an MBA. Now what do I do? So again, you start researching, and luckily the University of Minnesota had a weekend MBA program. I applied, was accepted, enrolled, and 2 years later, I have completed the MBA and was awarded a promotion. It's wonderful how that works. Now, be careful what you wish for. My MBA class, we took a trip to Europe, and we're driving through Austria, and one of my professors turns to me and says, Gordy, now that you have your MBA, what would you like to do? I'd like to teach. In retirement. I think retirement would be a good thing to do in retirement. something to keep me active. I could stay involved in the community. Kids are kind of fun to be around. And he says, well, why wait till retirement? Why not do it now? Because I have a job. I can't afford to teach. Well, about a week later, I get a phone call. And the phone call is from the department chair of the marketing department at the Carlson School of Management, asking me if I'd be willing to teach a class. Since it was only a temporary job, sure, I'll try it. Well, temporary leads to permanent when they ask you, will you come take this job full time? It required about a 50% pay cut. But you know what? Teaching was something that I loved, and I would like to do it, so the compelling offer was too hard to resist. And in 2000, I resigned the job that I took 8 years of going to school to get. If you've been following the timeline, in 26 years, I've gone from a college dropout to a college professor. What's interesting is that my life would come full circle. The school that I dropped out of in 1973 asked if I would come back and teach for them. In 2008, 35 years after I was a dropout, I was now on the faculty of this institution. So I had to ask myself, how could I go from being a college dropout to being a college professor? And as I reflect on my life, what I had to realize is that, I've had many transformations. You look at your actual self into who you want to be. What's going to be this ideal self? And every time that you make this transition, you have to establish some new goals. What is it you want? And you realize that getting there is not easy. But if the goal is worth having, you're going to find a way to achieve it. So now, I found myself that after 20 years in corporate life, I managed a $250 million product line at 3M. I thought I was pretty successful in corporate business. I spent 15 years now teaching, and I recently applied for a promotion as a professor. And guess what I was told? No. You have to have a terminal degree. Oh my God. All right, back to school again? All right, so now I realized I needed to have more education. And as I needed to have more education, I looked at my personal journey, and my personal journey led to a research topic about why is it that kids are in the same situation that I was in? Why do they want to go to college and leave? You realize that we have done about 80 years of research into college student retention. There's been dozens and dozens of books, hundreds and hundreds of articles. Colleges across the country have made all kinds of changes in order to try to accommodate and hopefully encourage students to remain in school. And you know what's happened? Not much of it works. Student retention is really not much different than what it was 80 years ago. They first started looking at retention back in the 1860s, and the percentage of students who started and graduated is about the same as it's been over the last 150 years. So even though we've tried, we haven't been very successful. So I looked at this as kind of a consumer purchase decision process. I'm a freshman student, and I realized I got a problem. I have no job skills. So what I need to do is to find some way of getting the job skill, and that job skill means I need to go to college. So I start searching for information. Who's going to give me that education? Do they have the major? What's the tuition going to cost? Is it near home? What's the graduation placement rate? Do the students actually like this particular school? And then I could consider, well, why do I need to go to school? I could drive truck. I could be a plumber. I could be an electrician. Maybe I don't need a college degree to earn the living that I want. And then we make the purchase. And how many of you have ever made a purchase and returned the item? So I make the decision, I want to go to college, and quitting school is returning the item. I went, and I didn't like it. So I'm sitting there thinking that what we really need to do is to find students who have a goal. They know what they want. They declare a major, and immediately that student gets a chance to take a class within their major. Unfortunately, in many schools across the country today, students who are going to school for the first time take college writing, public speaking, math, maybe some science class, and advising students over the years, they say, you know what? First semester of college feels like a fifth year of high school. I'm not involved in my major. And yet my research has suggested that if we get the student into their major in that first semester, they confirm why they're in school in the first place, they know what they want, they're looking at realizing I'm reaching my goal, that we can improve the retention rate of those students two times greater than the students who take all these classes and never take a class in their major. It's remarkable. Just get them involved early and our retention numbers go up dramatically. So, Mark Twain said, you know what? The two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. You're never too old to discover why you're here. Life isn't easy. And Mark Twain also said, I can teach anybody how to get what they want out of life. The problem is, I can't find anybody who can tell me what they want. Find out what you want. Set it as a goal. And then reach for it. Make a plan, and you can accomplish this. So my personal experience is really not much different than most people. You know, we set goals, life presents us some detours, we get back on track again, we kind of settle into our life, and we start realizing that maybe this is not what I wanted, but maybe there's something else I can do. And when we figure out what this is, you know, we realize that we can actually change what we're doing. Knowing what you want to do is the first step of becoming who you want to be. Figure out what it is that you want to be and make the effort to get there. This past December, I'm happy to say I finally got my doctorate and the promotion. Thank you.